Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Beth Chudley and I'm a learning experience consultant here at Sponge. And today we are going to be diving into the hot topic of onboarding. But importantly, we're going to be thinking about onboarding through the lens of your learners. And we're going to be exploring what your employees are really thinking and how to change their minds. Now, over the years, I've been involved in creating onboarding journeys for thousands of learners across sectors, including tech, retail, pharmaceutical, and financial and professional services. And although every organisation has its own specific challenges and specific goals, the general themes that we hear from learners that we speak to are the same. So today we've gathered 4 particular insights that we've heard as we have gone through that analysis phase where we're speaking to recently onboarded employees to find out about their experience and what was challenging and what worked for them. And we're going to be thinking about what you can do to ensure that people don't feel those onboarding blues and ultimately have a successful onboarding experience. Now, some of you may have joined me back in May when we started to think about this topic during a bite-sized seminar at Learning Technologies. And I'm looking forward to having a bit more time today to unpack these further and also provide some examples of how we've solved for these challenges for our clients. So we will make a start. And I just want to begin by talking quickly about the 4 insights that we are going to be exploring today. And as I mentioned, these are all real insights from real learners that we've heard throughout a range of different onboarding projects. The first one, I don't know if I've made the right choice. So I'm looking forward to unpacking this one. And you'll notice a lot of these are how people feel. And I think that's something that's really interesting when we think about onboarding is actually there is a practical element to it, but there's also a real emotional element to onboarding. And I think that becomes clear as we dive into each of these. But yes, so I don't know if I've made the right choice. Here we're really going to be thinking about what happens between that time of receiving a job offer to someone's first day. So looking forward to jumping into that one. The next one, I don't know what I should be doing. And just to clarify, what we mean here is I don't know what I should be doing as part of my onboarding. So we'll be digging into that and thinking about what you can be doing to support learners throughout that process. I don't know who to talk to and where to get answers. Now, this is an interesting one, and I think we can think about it a bit differently since the pandemic. And I think we've heard it a lot more since the pandemic. It's not a new challenge, but I think it's got a new lens to it. But we've solved for it before, and I'm looking forward to digging into that one as well. And then finally, I feel unprepared to do my actual job. So when we think about the purpose of onboarding, I think there are multiple. But one is that we ultimately get people to a point where they are competent and confident in performing and in their role in the organisation. So we will make a start and dig into our first insight. I don't know if I've made the right choice. Now I'm going to ask you all to just take a moment and think back to that time where you received a phone call to say that you got the job. And I'm sure we've all felt those feelings of excitement. We might ring our friends, our family to let them know. It's always a good feeling. Now, after that initial feeling of excitement, we may start to feel those feelings of uncertainty and doubt kind of creep in. It's completely natural as humans that we start to think about the unknown, and changing jobs is a huge can have a huge impact on our lives. So being able to respond to that feeling of not knowing if someone's made the right choice can be incredibly powerful with setting people up for success in their onboarding journey. Now, I just want to draw your attention to the statistic in the bottom of the page here, and that 65% of employers have experienced job seekers accepting an offer but not turning up on the first day. That's what we're trying to combat here. We don't want to take people through that hiring process and then enable those feelings of doubt and uncertainty to take over, which means they don't get to their first day. But equally, we want to ensure that people are getting to their first day and they're feeling engaged, they're feeling motivated to learn, and they're feeling ready to embrace their onboarding experience. So setting people up for that first day can have a huge impact on the rest of their onboarding journey. So what we can be doing to avoid that happening, avoid people kind of not feeling ready to embrace their new role and their onboarding process, is winning hearts and minds and doing it quickly. So our first key takeaway: providing your learners with an effective pre-boarding experience. So what we mean by that is connecting with learners between that time where they accept the job to their first day. Now, that time can vary in length for different people, for different companies. And it doesn't need to be all singing, all dancing, bells and whistles. It can be very simple and very effective. Now, I just want to draw your attention to point 2, capitalizing on your new joiners' excitement. So that effective pre-boarding experience gives you the tool to do that. It's an opportunity to keep that excitement going. And every time those feelings of uncertainty and doubt start to creep in, the pre-boarding experience can combat those. But point 3, balance the practical elements with building your employees' excitement. So we want to be continuing that feeling of excitement, but we know there are probably also some practical elements or practical questions that your employees will have naturally as they go to start a new role. Now, I challenge you here to really think about what is it that your learners need to know before day one. And it's probably not that much. Now, there are always logistical problems with pre-boarding as well. People won't have access to certain systems. They won't be privy to certain information yet. And we also don't want to overwhelm learners with too much information. So when it comes to those practical elements, it might be just responding to some frequently asked questions, some questions that people maybe feel too nervous to ask or too silly to ask. Something that reassures them that other people have those questions, and also just letting them know what to expect on day one can be enough to just tip those feelings of uncertainty and doubt back to those feelings of excitement for their first day. Now, just to bring this to life for you, we have supported a client in the past where pre-boarding was essential because there was certain compliance training that had to be done before they started day one. Whilst that was essential for their organisation, we also knew that we didn't want to overwhelm or lose that excitement of starting a new job. And they really wanted people to feel part of the company before day one. We know people needed to be motivated to put that compliance training into action. So we balanced the solution to really introduce people to the company. We lent into their tone of voice, we lent into their brand. And we included the compliance learning as well. So it was that real balance of what they needed to know with what we knew was going to connect them to the brand, to the company, to their employees. We used employees' voices throughout the digital solution. So moving on to our next insight. I don't know what I should be doing. And as I said, We aren't expecting employees to know what they should be doing on their first day necessarily, but they should know what they should be doing as part of their onboarding experience. And you can see here that organizations with a strong onboarding process improve new hire retention by 82% and productivity by over 70%. Now, I think those statistics are incredibly high and can have a huge impact on the organization and how much money would be saved if these strong onboarding processes were in place. So, creating that crystal clear journey for people to go on is key. And I would say this first point here is probably, in my opinion, the most important takeaway from what we're going to discuss today, which is creating an onboarding itinerary. This doesn't need to be, again, complex. It doesn't need to be the bells and whistles, as we said before. It needs to be something that is clear to your employees so they know what to expect and they know when to expect it. This can be as simple as a PDF or an email that sets out those moments in their onboarding experience. It also needs to be something that is communicated to them. So we've seen in the past organizations that have this crystal clear journey, but it's only, it's not shown to the learners. So they are surprised or they're not expecting a moment in that journey. So it needs to be communicated to them. And having sight of that, again, when we know that there are a lot of emotions in starting a new role, having sight of what to expect for however long is incredibly comforting for someone in a new role. Which brings me on to point 2, making sure everything your new starter needs is accessible. Now, this can be as straightforward as ensuring they have access to IT systems and they're set up to find what they need. But this goes beyond that. We need to ensure that people are able to access the content they need or the support they need when they need it. This can link to your onboarding itinerary, and also think about how role specific that itinerary needs to be. And we'll cover that a bit more later on. And finally, effectively scaffolding the onboarding journey. And what we mean by that is ensuring that there's enough time for people to build that knowledge, but also ensuring that it's scaffolded in a way that reflects the complexity of tasks. For example, we don't want to be giving colleagues access to an incredibly complex tool when they don't yet know the product in which they're trying to sell. So just ensure that when we're scaffolding that onboarding journey, it's done in a way where people are able to build that knowledge, and we're not jumping to the end goal. Okay, moving on to our third insight. I don't know who to talk to and where to get answers. Now, as I said, this has been an interesting challenge and not a new one, but I think it has been amplified by the pandemic, by a lot more people working virtually. And there's been some interesting insights that I think we can unpack as to what we mean by don't know who to talk to. Now, your mind might go straight to mentors and buddy systems, and you can see here that 84% of Fortune 500 companies use formal mentoring programs as part of their onboarding. We know it can be incredibly effective. But what I want to dig into is what we found when we've spoken to learners about this insight, not knowing who to talk to and where to get answers. We found that within teams, that communication can be quite strong. But actually, the focus on building that team support, building that team connection can actually take away from building connections across the organization. And what that leads to is a silos. So quite often part of the onboarding challenge that we faced in certain organizations is how do we break down those silos from day one? And how do we increase cross collaboration, cross teams, cross functions as part of the onboarding process? And it's been a really interesting challenge. So to combat this, we need to be building connections within and across teams. So not to say that the team connection isn't important or valuable, but just that we need to be thinking beyond that. Now, our first key takeaway, providing prompts to encourage social connection. This one is interesting because when we speak to learners, we quite often hear things like, well, I don't know if I should reach out, or I think they're busy, so I don't want to waste someone's time, or I think I have a stupid question and I feel like I should know the answer to that. When it comes to building connections and reaching out, sometimes we just need that prompt to know it's okay. We need to know that it's socially acceptable and it's the norm within the company to learn from others. So just providing those prompts, making it feel part of the culture, both within the team and within the organisation, can be incredibly powerful. And this comes back right to the pre-boarding experience, letting people know that people are there for them, and that social learning culture is key to that onboarding experience. Now, we mentioned the power of mentoring systems and buddy systems, and it's definitely something that we've built into our solutions with clients before, and quite often it's something that already exists when we work with when we collaborate with our clients. But again, when we've dug into what's working, where the challenges are, we've heard things like sometimes this works well and sometimes people don't get the same experience. So whilst the buddy system, mentoring system can be incredibly powerful, we find that there is this lack of consistency across organizations. And that's essentially our kind of key takeaway for point 2, is providing support to mentors and buddies. Quite often in onboarding experience, we focus so much on the people being onboarded, which makes sense. But there is more that we can do to support people who are supporting them. And then finally, looking beyond the immediate team. So as I mentioned, we again heard things like, later on in the onboarding process, people feel confident in what their team do and what their team's vision is, but not necessarily the wider function or even the wider organization. And we've worked with companies who are global organizations with tens of thousands of learners. So naturally silos exist. But we know the value of breaking down those silos and building networks as part of the onboarding process. Now, some things that you can be doing and some things that we've put in place as part of our solutions. Prompting those social connections. Something we've done in the past with an organisation is run workshops to identify when is a good time to learn from someone else, and then building that prompt into that onboarding itinerary. So, for example, a sales colleague might be interested in running that initial discovery call. It might start with that social connection being, can I watch you and learn from you, learn from observation? The next stage might be, can I give a part of that call a go and you give me feedback? And then the final stage might be, I'm going to run the call and you be there as almost a safety net. But providing those prompts to ask people if that's okay, if that can happen, just gives people that confidence to reach out and give it a go. So we actually built those prompts into a digital pathway to support people in that onboarding experience. Providing supports and mentors buddies to ensure consistency. Again, ensuring that they're aware of what the journey that people are going on as part of their onboarding can support in this. And then looking beyond the immediate team, something you might want to consider is setting up an onboarding cohort. So we know people are onboarded into a company, having that cohort where people are experiencing the same feelings, the same challenges, and the same onboarding journey can be powerful to connect them. So whether you want to do that as part of a face-to-face session or virtually, set them up a space in your internal communication network can support people in building those connections. Okay, moving on then to I feel unprepared to do my actual job. So again, when we think about onboarding and what it is we're trying to achieve, naturally there are these different stages where we onboard people to the company, and then we onboard them maybe to a function or a department, and then we onboard them specifically to a role. Now, this is from some internal Sponge research. And again, just drawing your attention to the bottom left-hand corner here. The average confidence rating provided by managers at a professional services firm when they were asked how confident they are that their employees are ready to perform following onboarding is 5 out of 10. So again, this is research conducted on the managers supporting newly onboarded employees, not the employees themselves. But an interesting perspective, I think, from that managerial level. So when it comes to preparing people for their roles, we need to be empowering them to thrive. The first key takeaway here is ensuring that role-specific onboarding is integrated. Now, I just kind of spoke about those different stages of onboarding that we tend to see when working with organizations. That initial kind of global onboarding to the company, maybe a more functional level onboarding, and then a role-specific onboarding. What we've seen when we've worked with our clients is that quite often the people department that are responsible for the company onboarding is completely different to who is responsible for the function specific or role specific onboarding. And naturally that can feel quite disconnected. That needs to feel like an integrated journey, a seamless journey from having that more company specific onboarding to the more role specific onboarding. Now, importantly, people need to feel like they are supported through that transition. So thinking about how they're joined up and how that doesn't feel like too much of a warm up and then too much into the performance kind of part of that onboarding process. Secondly, a key point of your onboarding journey has to be opportunities to practice. Ultimately, we can equip our learners with all the content that they need to do their role, but until they actually give it a go, they won't learn and they won't be competent in actually doing the role. And a key piece of that is receiving feedback. So ensure that those opportunities to practice and to receive feedback are built into that onboarding journey. And then finally, onboarding is not an orientation. Quite often we see onboarding be a matter of weeks. But actually, when we think about onboarding, it needs to be considered months or even up to a year. The support might get less, but people will still be facing challenges throughout that year. And we need to ensure that they feel supported at each of those moments. So again, think back to some of the takeaways that we've discussed today around ensuring that things are accessible, ensuring there's that itinerary, ensuring that feedback is built into your journey, and just think about what that would look like on an annual scale. Okay, so a quick recap then. Thank you for sticking with me today, and I hope some of those key takeaways have been useful and prompted some considerations as to how you might structure that onboarding experience for your learners. So first we covered, I don't know if I've made the right choice. So we thought about how we can take that excitement that people feel when they first accept a job and keep it going to their day one and beyond. Now, the solution to that is winning hearts and minds and doing it quickly. So we considered things like an effective pre-boarding experience. We considered balancing what they really need to know to avoid that cognitive overwhelm. And we also considered how we might continue that excitement through connection, through introducing employees to company values, and what to expect on day one. We then explored the theme of I don't know what I should be doing. And again, just to reiterate, we mean I don't know what I should be doing as part of my onboarding process. Now, we spoke about there creating a crystal clear journey. So ensuring that both you and your learners know what to expect as part of that onboarding experience and when to expect it. So then our third insight, I don't really know who to talk to and where to get answers. Again, we thought about this from the perspective of since the pandemic, we've moved to this kind of hybrid way of working. A lot of organisations and don't necessarily have those water cooler conversations that we might have had in the past. But we also spoke about how important it was to build those connections, both within, but also across teams. So thinking about onboarding cohorts to build those networks and ensure that people have support beyond. Job. So here we're really looking to empower your people to thrive, and ensuring that journey from company wide onboarding to more specific functional or role onboarding is cohesive and it feels integrated, it feels part of one journey. So as I said, thank you so much for joining me today, and please reach out if you'd like to discuss this further. It's always a great topic to discuss.